The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Loss in our lives takes on many different forms and can be more than just a physical loss. It goes beyond that to include emotional loss, business loss, and loss of personal health. This is Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts. Today, Cathy and her guests will help you find out that you are not alone in dealing with loss and grief. There are so many different ways to deal with loss. What works for some may not work for others. Together, let's find the solution that you can use. Here's your host, Cathy Roberts.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Voices for Healing Talk Radio. I'm your host, Cathy Roberts. In my work as a professional counselor and educator in the Washington, D.C. area, I work with people living with all sorts of losses, great and small. You can learn more about me and my work on my website, cathyroberts.net, and from there we can connect on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and more. You can also subscribe to Voices for Healing on iTunes and get regular podcast downloads of this program. Each week, this show features a guest who has expertise in some area of loss and healing. My wish for everyone listening is that you might connect with some of the things you hear on the program, feel less alone in your own loss, and find healing practices that you can add to your toolkit to become as whole as you can possibly be. Today, my guest is Kathleen Paisley, author of The 10 Mind Traps of Depression, A Hurt in Your Soul and How to Heal It. Hi, Kathleen, and welcome to Voices for Healing.
Hi, Cathy. It's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you on the show. You really know your subject here from firsthand experience. Let me introduce you to our listeners, and then we'll hear about your journey and your book. A longtime seeker, Kathleen Paisley's overriding passion is spirituality. She knows serious depressive episodes firsthand and wrote the book, The 10 Mind Traps of Depression, A Hurt in Your Soul and How to Heal It, after using both spirituality and Western medicine to manage her own disease. In her book, she encourages those suffering from depressive episodes to embrace a spiritual practice to support recovery. Kathleen manages the career of Edamir Rossi, renowned Brazilian spiritual healer, leader, guide, and teacher. She co-authored a book on meditation with Edamir and develops retreats that focus on the spiritual journey. Kathleen majored in English Lit at Manhattanville College and has an MBA from Boston University. She's had a successful career as a fundraiser for international women in leadership, mental health care, people living with AIDS, and science museums around the world. She lives in Washington, D.C. In the hour ahead, we will hear about Kathleen's journey, what she learned about her own thinking processes and mind traps as she learned more about her own depression, and how she began to empower herself with medical, spiritual, and social supports. Kathleen, let's begin with you sharing how you came to write The 10 Mind Traps of Depression.
Well, Cathy, I'd say, first of all, I'm a communicator by nature, and I love to write. And it seemed to be kind of a natural progression that I went through from simply talking to people about depression, which is a topic that's often taboo in our society, to wanting to write about it. And I really feel that people need to talk about this subject more openly, and the best way for me to be a part of that happening was to speak up myself. So I also feel that being of service is probably the single most important spiritual practice any of us can have. And since this seems to be a topic that I'm a reluctant expert on, I felt that it was a way for me to give back.
You certainly are. Your book is a real... it's short. I would love our readers to have contact with it at some point. It's short, under 100 pages, but covers so much information about what it's like to experience depression and how to begin to move through it and heal. And that's an ongoing process for many people experiencing it. What kinds of feedback are you getting from friends and family about your decision to share your story on a topic that some people don't like to talk about?
Well, I'd say that most people in my life have encouraged me to write, but there are those who were a little skeptical because it is something there's a lot of shame and guilt around the idea of suffering with the depression. And I think that some of my friends were a little concerned, well, if I get out there about this, are people going to judge me, or how are they going to feel? But I feel very strongly that it's an illness like any other illness, and if we don't talk about it, there's a lot of hidden agendas in people's heads as to what's really going on. So I think it's important to be honest and open. I did have one friend who I mentioned in the book, not by name, but I mentioned that she has had depression, and she was very reluctant to be, put in that category because she felt like it could impact her career. So I did take her out of the book. So some people are still very skittish about talking about this topic openly.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we have the flu or even chronic illnesses like diabetes or fibromyalgia or some other kinds of autoimmune and other diseases, people often talk about them and share them with people, and their friends and family know, and even other people know. And depression and bipolar and unipolar depression and other illnesses that are more, we call, mental illness rather than physical illness, although I see the mind and body as being very connected, seem to have more of a stigma. And that seems to continue, even though more people attend counseling and therapy. There is more open talk about it. Some people in the public eye have come out and acknowledged their depression, but there still seems to be that stigma. I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we are in a society that's a can-do society. It's a society that values independence and strength and courage, and those are all wonderful things to have. But when you're in a depression, you usually are someone who is in a place of needing help. And we're very reluctant in our society, I think, to acknowledge that we need help. If you have an illness and it can be treated medically, as depression can, it puts it in a different category. But for some reason, depression versus cancer versus lupus versus diabetes, it has a whole different connotation. And I think because of that, it's important for those of us who have it and have survived it and who are dealing with it, talk openly about it.
Yeah, it does go counter sometimes to some of the ethos of the American ethic in terms of we ought to be strong and we ought to be able to deal with everything and handle things by ourselves. And what you've learned, and what most people who experience depression learn, is it's really not something that you can do alone. Sometimes the tendencies are to withdraw and to isolate, and there are times to do that, but to do that for a long period of time really isn't helpful to the depression. It really is something that it's through connection that depression can heal, as well as through medical interventions. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I have a friend who's had a lot of depression, and she said to me once, which just really resonated with me, is that the very things you need when you're in a depression are the things that you don't want to do and are the things that you don't want to have to deal with. Isolation is a big part. You don't want to have to be with people. You want to be able to retreat, and that's really not the best thing for you to do. You don't want to have to admit that you've got a problem, but that's one of the things that you have to face when you've got a depression. So it's kind of contrary to what you want to do or the things that you need to do.
Very good point. I find that often with people I work with. It's hard. Depression really saps your motivation and takes away a sense of meaning. And so it can be really hard to do something that you don't want to do, and a lot of times you don't want to do much of anything.
Exactly. I think, I always say when I was at the depths of my depression, I have 3 couches in my house, and I would just go from one couch to the other, just kind of in a prone position. My big activity was going from floor to floor. So, and I do believe there are times in the depression, Cathy, where, giving in to the feeling is something that's valuable to. You're totally, driven to go out to a party when you don't feel like it. I don't think that that's necessarily always the best solution. I think when you really are feeling down and vulnerable and you don't want to be around people and feel even more edgy, I think there are times when you have to just, give into it and just wait for the process of the medication to kick in, therapy to help, community to help, and a spiritual practice to help.
At times there may even be something happening that is positive in that process of doing nothing.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of healing takes place when we are doing nothing. And I know I've got a busy addiction. I feel like I have to be constantly on the go. And just to take that time, and most spiritual practice does take quiet time, does take alone time. And I think unless we give ourselves that freedom to have that, it's hard to heal.
I think so too. I agree with you on that. So you, in your book, you have really paid attention to your thought process and how you think when you're in the grips of depression, and you've come up with 10 mind traps that you've identified. Can you begin to share 1 or 2 of those mind traps with us?
Sure. Well, I think the one I put in the number 1 spot, because I think it's the most significant and common one, is that we often think that the real reason we're depressed is our circumstances. And when we get our act together again, and when things are better in terms of the problems we have and they're behind us, I'm going to feel better. And it's a state of denial, of thinking, well, this is just basic sadness. But when it lingers for a long time, when you have all those symptoms of isolation and hopelessness, you can't concentrate, some people have a change in appetite, there's a whole array of symptoms that go along with the depression. And when you're really feeling all of those, it's not just a matter of changing the circumstances in your life to solve the problem. So I think that that's one of the major ones that most people get trapped in. I think another one is that...
Before you go on to the next one, you mentioned the symptoms that we experience during depression, and I wanted to highlight those for people before we go into our first break to help people who may be thinking, gee, I wonder if they're talking about me. And so some of the things that you might experience if you are experiencing a depression is persistent sadness. Now, throughout our day, there are times that we feel sad off and on. Any of these things we may feel off and on throughout our day, but when these sorts of things persist, it might be good to take a look at yourself and maybe get some help or ask a friend or counselor or somebody. But persistent sadness, hopelessness, guilt and feelings of worthlessness, losing interest in things you usually like to do is a big one that lets us know that we may be experiencing depression. Fatigue, insomnia, inability to concentrate, thoughts of suicide, and even digestive problems that you can't seem to find a solution for. If you keep going to the doctor with different kind of digestive problems and they can't find anything in the digestive system, it may be an indication that something is going on in the way of depression. So is there anything you'd like to add to that list, Kathleen?
No, I would say you've really hit them all. I think one might be feeling overwhelmed by things. Sometimes at work when I was really depressed, writing a letter could seem like a monumental task. I have a friend who's a housewife, and she keeps talking about how when she's really depressed, sewing a button on becomes a major league event, So I think when you find yourself feeling overwhelmed by normal things that you could normally, achieve very easily, that's another symptom.
Well, it's time for our first break already. Listeners, we're going to leave you to ponder the symptoms of depression that we just talked about. And you're listening to Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts and guest Kathleen Paisley, and we will be right back.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net. or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019.
Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN.
Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series, designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to cathyroberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at cathyroberts.net. That's Cathy at cathyroberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes once said, "There's nothing, repeat, nothing to be ashamed of when you're going through a depression. If you get help, the chances of your licking it are really good. But you have to get yourself onto a safe path." This is Cathy Roberts with guest Kathleen Paisley talking about depression and her book, The 10 Mind Traps of Depression, A Hurt in Your Soul and How to Heal It. Kathleen, you shared with us that one of the things that we think when we are experiencing depression is that it's because of whatever's going on around us right now, and that when we get our act together, then the depression will go away. When that's the kind of thought that's going on, what do you do? How do you help yourself talk back, push back against that thought?
Well, I think that first trap is the one that I talk the most about, getting help. I've done a lot of therapy in my life. I've had a strong spiritual practice. I've always gotten good exercise. I've done a lot of things that, are classically important for combating depression. But going and getting pharmaceutical help, I was very, very reluctant to do. I guess because I'm very into the mind-body connection. I thought that was a sense of defeat, or, I should be able to conquer this on my own, and, this is just a matter of once things get a little bit better, I'll feel better. But it's that acknowledgement that you need help, and I think that is the most important aspect of, getting, you don't really get cured of depression usually, but getting the assistance that you need to combat it. And I think it is, for many of us, a lifelong chore to keep in perspective that this is often a recurring illness, and you've got to be vigilant about it for a lifetime.
You've said two things in here that I think are really important, and I want to come back to. I'm glad you shared that sometimes medication's needed, even for people who are very holistically oriented. And I think that what can happen is the medication can give you the boost you need to be able to do the other things that will help you get through or get out of this particular episode of depression. And without the medication, you might not, you might do like what you said, Kathleen, circulate from couch to couch to couch and not be able to get up and take that walk or meditate or do some of the other things that might be helpful for you.
You're absolutely right.
So I'm really glad that you brought that up and talk about it, as that wasn't an easy choice for you to make.
No, it wasn't. I think the way that I deal with it the most easily now is just to think, God is in that pill. It's not necessarily God is a spiritual entity that isn't manifest in other aspects of your getting help. And I honestly think that, God is expressing himself through my doctor and through the medication as well.
I really like that. That brought a smile to my face. God is in that pill. I love that. And the other thing you said that I think is so important, and I want people to know, is that depressive episodes can be recurring and can happen throughout your life. And while some people may only have one episode and go on and not experience that again, for many people live with depression like any other kind of chronic physical illness that you might have. And so that seems really important to highlight and let people know that you do the best you can with what you're going through each day and try to maintain the healthy habits and attitudes that you talk about in your book. And we'll get to those in a little bit. An
interesting thing, too, Cathy, I think, is that a lot of people decide to go off their medications after they're feeling good for a while. And in some instances, that makes perfect sense. But often, just because you're feeling good doesn't mean that you don't need the chemical boost to keep you in a stable place.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that can be different about depression and some of the physical illnesses that we talk about is depression in each person is very different, and you don't know how it's going to be for you, whether you're going to be one of those people who will need to take medication for a longer period of time, or whether the medication can help you get to the level where you are able to do other things that support your depression. And some of that is what the cause is, whether it's a situational depression due to something that's occurred in your life, or whether it's something that may be more biochemical in your system. So you're really talking about some helpful, good stuff. I appreciate it. So would you like to share another mind trap with us?
Sure. One, I think, is that when we're in a depression, we feel like we're never going to feel good again. And you can think that you're not getting any better and that you're going to be hopeless and depressed the rest of your life. I think one of the big symptoms of depression is often hopelessness. And one of the things I say in my book, and I say to friends of mine when they're experiencing a depression, and I tell myself this too, that my mind is not always my friend when I'm depressed. I think of myself as a very intelligent person, but the unreliability of my mind when I'm in a depressed state is very strong. As one of my friends calls it, the itty-bitty shitty committee in her head, that's kind of got this droning voice going on that's negative and also often judgmental and self-loathing. So, sometimes when I'm in my mind, I'm behind enemy lines. I have to be very careful about that. And thinking that you're never going to feel good again is one of those things that, you will feel good again. It will get better. And there's always hope. And I think that those are important things to keep in mind, and why affirmations and some of the positive things I talk about in my book can really help.
Yeah. In the thick of it, you think it will always be the way it is right now. Right. And there's not that sense that it's going to be different. And one of my colleagues has a little sign on her door that says, "Don't believe everything you think."
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Yes.
The other thing that I find, and it's one of my other mind traps, and I don't know if other people experience this, but, I come from a big Irish family, and humor is a big part of what we're all about. And when I'm depressed, my humor goes right out the window. And, I have to give myself a break, because if I'm not being a stand-up comic at the moment, that's just the nature of this illness, that, one of the things that can leave you is your sense of humor and your sense of perspective. So cutting yourself some slack is a big, to me, part of treating yourself well, understanding that, God himself is mercy, and we've really got to cut a little mercy for ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't know if you looked at the topic of next week's show, but next week it will be on humor, and humor as a healing potential when you're going through some kind of loss. So it's fun that you bring it up, because it's what we'll be talking about next week, and our guest will be a stand-up comic.
That's interesting. I do find that sometimes when I'm depressed, watching, Woody Allen movie or watching even Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers can bring a smile to my face. And it just helps you get out of yourself to see something funny or beautiful or uplifting.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who is really in the thick of it right now and just is in that place of thinking it's always going to be this way and doesn't see a way out of it? What words would you have for that person?
I would say there is always hope, and you will get better, and this too shall pass. And it's hard to believe it right now, but I'm living testimony to it, because I've had a number of depressions and they've all lifted. And, the truth of the matter is, you've survived today, and your track record for getting through bad days so far is 100%, and that's pretty good. So I think, we just have to keep on keeping on and get the help that you need. And I'm really high on at least talking to a doctor, whether it's a psychiatrist, a psychopharmacologist, or your gynecologist, your internist, and just see if it's possible that you might need some medical help.
Yeah. And I want to share with our listeners what you share in your book, which is that you have been through depressions for over 2 decades at this point. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And as someone who considers myself kind of an optimistic, upbeat, positive person, it's particularly disconcerting when you have these feelings of despair when you're accustomed to being up. So it's not just a gloomy, melancholic personality that can suffer with a depression. It's all sorts of personalities.
And that's one of the reasons I really like having you on the show as a guest, is because you are that upbeat, very functional personality who is generally optimistic, but have for many years dipped down into depression and come back up. And so you really can offer something to our listeners, and I appreciate that. Here we are, ready for another break already, listeners. I'm going to share another quote with you. This one from Dick Cavett, who said, "The greatest benefit of depression is the fact that when I have talked about it, every so often someone comes up to me and says, 'You saved my dad's life.' Kathleen and I are talking about depression. If you're experiencing this illness, we want you to know that you're not alone and help is available." You're listening to Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts and guest Kathleen Paisley, and we are taking another break. We will be right back.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to cathyroberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at cathyroberts.net. That's Cathy at cathyroberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
Welcome back to Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts and guest Kathleen Paisley. Cathy and I were just discussing during the break about how any discussion of depression must also include the difficult to talk about topic of suicide. And so we're going to spend some time in this next segment with Cathy sharing a bit of her story about suicidal thoughts that she had and what kept her from acting on these thoughts when she was deeply depressed. Cathy, this is something very personal, and I appreciate your willingness to share with us.
Sure, no problem. I think it's important to talk about suicide, Cathy, because suicide actually kills more people than homicide in this country. About 32,000 people a year die from suicide, and for every one person who commits suicide, about 16 attempt it. So it's really a crisis, a health crisis that we're not, nobody talks about it openly. So I'm happy to share, although it's, of course, a little bit embarrassing in retrospect, but the one time I came really close to killing myself, I was in the throes of a very serious depression. And I just had this insane idea that I was going to go to a Holiday Inn near where I live because I didn't want anybody to have to find me in my house. My thinking was just so crazed. And so I was packing my bag, which is another insane thing because you wouldn't really need to pack your bag to go kill yourself. But I guess
it made sense at the time somehow. You were going to a hotel. Huh?
It did. So anyway, I was looking for my my credit cards, and I had two at the time, one ATM card and an American Express card that I was using, and I couldn't find either card. And it was like a lightning bolt went through me because I just knew that this was a sign from God that was not what He wanted me to do, and that this was, I had really gone over an edge of kind of crazy thinking that, something permanent was going to alleviate a temporary feeling. So it was a real wake-up call for me, and I think we all who are depressed, who have those suicidal thoughts, you can remember that they just can be thoughts. You don't have to act on them.
Yes, and you don't have to take a permanent action for a temporary issue. You don't need a...
Right. And I think that the other thing that helps me and I think can help others when they're considering doing something drastic is really think about maybe 3 people who you would hurt the most by committing suicide, and would any of those people feel guilty about it if you killed yourself? And are you willing to risk creating a trauma in your family that they might never get over? And then I usually think it's important to go into, in your mind, what you do have to be grateful for, because we can always be grateful for the roof over our head, or a good night's sleep the night before, or just the sunshine in the middle of the day. And I think if you focus on something positive, it really helps alleviate that negative train wreck that you're going towards.
Absolutely. And another way of saying that can be what keeps you from acting when you feel that way. And that can turn your mind to the things in your life that you do value and care about, and help you ride through that tough time. So let's also share what people might do if a friend or family member is expressing thoughts of killing themselves, or doing some of the things that people do when they're thinking about it, such as giving things away. Even mentioning it in a kind of joking way can sometimes be a clue that somebody really is thinking about it. What can friends or family do to help people?
Well, I think, number one, it's important that they take the person seriously and not think of it as a joke. I think it's important to get help yourself if you're in that situation, and really urge the person to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. It's important to express concern, of course, and to listen attentively to that person, and maintain eye contact, and use body language such as holding the person's hand, and ask direct questions. Find out if they have a specific plan for suicide, and really acknowledge the person's feelings, but don't relieve the person of responsibility for what that would mean if, in fact, they did kill themselves. So it's a hard one. It's like any kind of difficult topic. It's very, very hard to talk about, but just by the very act that someone's willing to talk about it, I think it means that they're open to another solution.
Absolutely. And if it seems like a real crisis, of course, take the person to the hospital or call 911 if it seems like some kind of action is imminent, or it's bigger than you feel like you can handle.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, one thing I like about your book is you have the 10 mind traps, and then you also have this section on suicide, which I think is really important. I also want to give our listeners the suicide hotline in the United States, which is 1-800-273-8255. Again, 1-800-273-8255. So, well, the second half of your book is full of good stuff that people can do to begin to help themselves through depression. And you share that one of your favorite prayers comes from the book A Course in Miracles, and it is, "Help me to see this another way." And that really reflects what we're talking about here on so many levels, whether it's the mind traps or the suicidal thoughts. Help me to see this another way. Share with us how you use that prayer.
Well, A Course in Miracles says that a miracle doesn't have to be, curing cancer or seeing an angel or the Virgin Mary in the sky, but rather a shift in your perception. So when I find I can move to a more loving and compassionate view of myself, it goes a long way towards helping me deal with my depression. So I often say, when things seem so desperate, is, please, God, just let me look at this differently. And, it might come in the form of opening a book and reading an inspirational passage. It might be seeing a sign on the street. It often, to me, spiritual messages often come in odd packages. It's not exactly what you're looking for. But I think the spiritual realms are trying to communicate with us at all times. So if you open yourself up to that perception and seeing things a little bit differently, the ammunition for doing that will come.
One of the themes that I hear you saying again and again and again is to get help in different ways. And some of that help can come from real life people, some of it comes from pharmaceuticals, and some of it comes from source, energy, God, whatever we want to call that which is greater and all-knowing and bigger than us. And there's a lot of help out there and a lot of places to get help.
That's right. I tell a story in my book that one time years ago when I was actually suffering from one of my first depressions, I was kind of tossing and turning on my bed, and all of a sudden I felt like this angelic presence, and I have never before or since experienced something like this, but I felt like this presence kind of pinning me down on the bed and saying, you have to quiet your mind in order to hear. And it was just such a profound moment for me, Cathy, because I knew right away what that voice meant was I had to start meditating, and I had to start getting out of my thoughts and trying to open myself up to a new way of looking at things.
That story is a perfect segue into the next question I was going to ask you, because your spiritual journey has been so key to your healing. And I was hoping maybe you could share some of the highlights of that journey with us and how your depression healing and spiritual journey intersect.
Well, I'd say I've always been a seeker, Cathy, but I really got into a spiritual path about 30 years ago, I'd say. And it was actually through a book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And the book practically fell on my head in a bookstore, and I just said, I've got to buy this book. And
I love it when that happens.
I know. It was just like meant to be. And I got on a plane coming back from California on a business trip, read the book, just sitting on the flight, and it just so wowed me that we have this power within us and the power of the universe or the universal energy, whatever you want to call it, on our side, wanting us to heal. And that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. And I have found since then, I used to always read novels, and I'm a big reader, but, after I first got awakened spiritually, I started finding myself, always turning towards the section of the bookstore that had spiritual readings. I just couldn't help myself. It was what I became very, very interested in. And I think it's helped me a lot because I have a lot of practices that, come in handy when I'm going through a depression. And it could be A Course in Miracles, it could be Louise Hay, it could be Marianne Williamson, it could be Deepak Chopra. I do something now called Science of Mind, which I really like a lot, but it's all positive, affirmative, upbeat, inspirational work. And so that to me is what spirituality is all about.
And what you've said is so true about the book kind of falling on your head in the bookstore. And I know I've experienced many times, someone sometimes will give me a book and say, you really need to read this book. And I look at it and it doesn't really connect with me. And 5 years later, I pick it up and it's almost like it gets absorbed into my DNA, and something in the reading of it actually changes me or shifts the perspective for me. And so Absolutely. When you said that about Louise Hay's book, I just so knew what you meant by that.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up to our final break. As we prepare to take that other break, I want to share the words of a contemporary singer and songwriter, Gautier. And he sings a song, and one of the lines in it is, "You can be addicted to a certain kind of sadness." The power of depression is that we can form an attachment to it and know it in a way, and even begin to love it or know it as a part of who we are and not know who we are without it. And coming to terms with this and releasing that hook that it has on us and we have in it is a part of the healing. We can strip away what we are not and live into the truth of who and what we really are, which is not our depression. Kathleen will continue our conversation when we come back from our break. Listeners, stay with us. There's more about healing depression when we come back.
Helping you make informed decisions for your life. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019.
We're making it easier to listen to the Voice America Talk Radio Network live wherever you go on iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android. Download it from the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to cathyroberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information.
Learn more. Live better. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at cathyroberts.net. That's Cathy at cathyroberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
Listeners, you're listening to Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts and Kathleen Paisley. Kathleen, can you share with our listeners how they can reach you and if they would like to email you or chat with you about what they're hearing on the program?
Sure. I can be reached at Kathleen, that's Kathleen, Paisley, Pasley, at hotmail.com. And they can also read my blog, which appears on my website, which is www.kathleenpaisley.com.
Very good. Thank you, Kathleen. Where are we here? Oh, yes. Kathleen has practices that help her to release the hook of depression in her life and bring her into the truth of who she really is. Can you share those 5 practices with us in our final segment here, Kathleen?
Yes. Affirmations are really tried and true for me. They really help me get out of the negative self-talk, destructive mentality, and change my view to a more optimistic one. They're a great reinforcement for the belief that there's a benign force underlying our world and that this divine presence wants only the best for us. So, even for me, when affirmations seem impossible or silly, I still state them with conviction. And I find that for me, the important thing is to write them down. If you write down an affirmation and carry it with you, or even write it down every morning, it really reinforces the power of positive thinking. So, again, you might not get immediate results, but over time, it will help your negativity, of all the things that you're regretting, all the things that you don't feel good about yourself. It can change it immensely.
And over time, I like you're adding that part. This is not something that, may be a quick fix. Can you share a particular affirmation that you like to use?
Yes, I could. There's one that I love, and it's actually a Louise Hay one, but I try to say this to myself all the time, and it is, I am being divinely guided and protected at all times.
Lovely. Lovely. The second practice that you do regularly, and I want to reinforce that Kathleen does these practices on a regular basis. When she's feeling great, she does them, and when she's feeling low, she does them. Is that right, Kathleen? So
That's right.
These are part of your life. The second practice is prayer. Tell us a little about how you use prayer.
Well, I have a prayer partner that I started with a few years ago, and it's just made an immense difference in my life. We connect every single morning, come rain or shine, no matter where we are in the world. We try to make a point of connecting on the phone, and we pray together. We usually read an inspirational reading. There's a magazine I use called Science of Mind, but you can use any kind of inspirational writer that you want. And you just start out with that, and then each one of us will say, God, thank you so much for, we go through a litany of things, and then put in our prayers, anyone, including ourselves, that we feel need help. And it's just a way of shaping your day that puts God first, or puts your higher power first, and gets you started on the right foot in the morning.
Beautiful. It also keeps you connected with somebody every day, the same person
Absolutely.
Every day. It's really lovely. Gratitude is the third practice that you mentioned.
Yes, I think gratitude is hard to be in a negative space when you're feeling gratitude. So I keep a gratitude list regularly. I wish I could say I do it every day, but I try to. And what I do is on the left-hand side, I write down what I am grateful for now. And so I might say, I'm grateful for my nieces, I'm grateful for my job, I'm grateful for my garden, very simple things. And then on the right-hand side of this little notebook, I put what I'm grateful for in the future. So it might be, I'm grateful for my positive mood, I'm grateful for the new relationship in my life. So I try to cover both ends of it, what I'm grateful for now and what I'm grateful for, what I hope to be grateful for in the future.
Yes. And listeners, when you are writing the things you're grateful for or thinking about them, really try to feel it in your body. That's what really can help, is not just listing and writing. That's good. That's great. Do that. But also really feel what that is in your body, to feel that. We have about one more minute, and maybe forgiveness and meditation. Let's talk for a minute about forgiveness, Cathy, because I think meditation, most people have some idea of what that is.
Well, forgiveness, I think, is one of the most significant spiritual practices that we have in our toolbox. And I think forgiveness for the self is the most important one that you can have if you have depression, to realize that this is not something under your control. It's not a weakness. It's actually, I find most people who have depression are very, very strong people, that they can get up in the morning and get out and do. So forgive yourself, for starters, and then forgive anyone else in your life who is that you feel a negative feeling towards, because if you forgive, it's hard again to be in a negative place. It makes you feel good. It's really, you do it for yourself as well as for the other person.
Yes. Listeners, we're just about at the end of our show here. Kathleen Paisley has been my guest today. She has a whole lot of information about depression. I hope you will go to her website, read her blog, and contact her about her book, The 10 Mind Traps of Depression, A Hurt in Your Soul and How to Heal It. We're at the end of our time. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Thank you, Kathleen, for being my guest. If you can hang on for a moment, I'd like to speak with you at the end of the show. Thanks for sharing your powerful story. Next week on May 5th, comedian and whoopie pie creator Cindy Cecil Bragg will share with us her recipe for healing loss, which is laughter. Come back next week for the healing power of humor. Until then, transform loss, embrace vitality. This is Cathy Roberts on Voices for Healing.
Thank you for listening to Voices for Healing. Please join Cathy Roberts again next Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. We wish you the best recovery from your loss, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.